On the day of our visit, in a Saturday morning, late August, there were a long queue.
The British Museum is one of the world's most famous and comprehensive museums dedicated to human history, art, and culture. Established in 1753, it was the first national public museum in the world, and it is free to all visitors. The museum's vast collection spans over 2 million years of history and includes artifacts from every continent.
The British Museum plays a significant role in global education and research. It provides insights into human history and cultural exchanges over time. However, it has also faced controversies over the ownership and repatriation of artifacts, with some countries requesting the return of cultural treasures taken during the colonial era. These debates highlight ongoing discussions about the ethics of museum collections and the stewardship of cultural heritage.
This is where we start on the queue.
The line was moving fast, so we did not wait for long.
The British Museum continues to be a major tourist attraction, drawing millions of visitors annually who come to see its diverse and historically significant collections.
In 2023, the museum received 5,820,860 visitors, an increase of 42% from 2022. It was the most popular attraction in the United Kingdom according to ALVA, which is the Association of Leading Visitor Attractions.
The museum was established in 1753, largely based on the collections of the Anglo-Irish physician and scientist Sir Hans Sloane. It first opened to the public in 1759 in Montague House, on the site of the current building.
This is the Great Court. It was developed in 2001 and surrounds the original reading room.
The Great Court is a 2-acre space, the largest covered public square in Europe. Enclosed under a spectacular glass and steel roof, the court contains a number of sculptures.
The court, tessellated glass roof, was engineered by Buro Happold and was built by Wagner Biro.
One of the most famous objects in the museum is the Rosetta Stone. It is located in room 4. It was instrumental in deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphs. It dates back to 196 BC, and it features the same text written in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic.
The Rosetta Stone is made of granodiorite, a dark, dense type of rock. It measures about 1.14 meters, equivalent of 3 feet 7 inches in height, 0.72 meters, equivalent of 2 feet 4 inches in width, and 0.28 meters, equivalent of 11 inches in thickness. It weighs approximately 760 kilograms, equivalent of 1,676 pounds.
The text on the Rosetta Stone is a decree that affirms the royal cult of the 13-year-old King Ptolemy V. It details the king's accomplishments and the granting of tax exemptions to the priesthood, illustrating the close relationship between the king and the priests.
The monuments in the Egyptian sculpture gallery were created for eternity. Placed in temples and tombs, the statues and wall images were meant as vehicles for the spirits of deities, kings, and privileged officials.
False door of Jetji and Debit. This false door and that to the right come from the mastaba tomb of Jetji and his wife Debit, whose name means hippo. False doors stood in tomb chapels and were the focus of mortuary rituals.
Statues of King Senweret III. The king stands in a pose of devotion. He wears a headcloth and kilt with a matching pattern of broad and narrow pleats, rearing cobras, symbolizing divine protection, crown his forehead and frame the beaded band down the front of his kilt.
Head and arm of a statue of Amenhotep III. The king stood with both arms straight down, holding containers for papyrus documents. This statue and a slightly smaller companion flanked a doorway temple precinct of Mut, consort of Amun-Ra, in Karnak.
The goddess, Sekhmet. Sekhmet was a lion goddess whose name means the mighty one, and she personified the aggressive aspects of other goddesses. Sekhmet was a daughter of the sun god Ra, and she usually wears a sun disk on her head.
King Ramesses II. This is the upper part of a colossus-seated statue, one of a pair flanking the entrance to the hypostyle hall in the king's mortuary temple, the Ramesseum. The statue was carved from one block, quarried at Aswan almost 200 kilometers further south. Roughly shaped and weighing some 20 tons, it was transported on sleds over land and on a purpose-built boat down the River Nile.
Sarcophagus of Merimos. Merimos's mummy lay inside this sarcophagus, which was itself contained within two larger sarcophagi. Protective spells and figures of deities cover all surfaces. The sky goddess Nut spreads her wings on the chest. The goddess Nephthys protects the body at the head end, as does her sister Isis at the foot end.
Sarcophagus of Hapman. All surfaces bear figures of gods and funeral turrets near the need, and one side displays a false door with eyes, allowing the spent tree movement and sight. A spell from the Book of the Dead was thought to help it come forth by day. The central figure on the long sides, one poorer, one human-headed, is Anubis, the god of mummification.
Female Sphinx. In Greek mythology, the Sphinx was a monster with the head of a woman, a bird's wings, the body of a lion, and often a serpent tail. By contrast, the Sphinxes of pharaonic Egypt were symbols of royal power. This Greek Sphinx and its pair may once have guarded the tomb of a Greek inhabitant of Egypt.
Moai, known as Hoa Hakanea, basalt ancestor figure, made about AD 1000 to 1200, in Rapa Nui, which is Easter Island of Chile.
This monument is located in room 24.
The Polynesian peoples of Rapa Nui created the extraordinary stone figures Moai, for which the island is famous. From around AD 1000, islanders invested huge resource and effort in quarrying the stone and carving the statues. Hoa Hakanea is different from most other Moai.
He is carved from hard basalt, rather than the softer volcanic stone, which was generally used. On his back are a number of carved symbols depicting frigate bird heads and human bird figures, amongst other things. These relate to the island's birdman ceremonies, which were associated with fertility and access to resources.
The Saintsbury African Galleries.
The Saintsbury African Galleries house a rich and diverse collection of African art and artifacts. These galleries are part of the British Museum's extensive collection and showcase over 600 objects from different regions of Africa, spanning thousands of years of history.
The African Galleries is located in room 25, named after the Saintsbury family, who made a significant donation to support the galleries.
The exhibits are organized thematically, rather than geographically or chronologically, to highlight the interconnectedness of African cultures and the dynamic nature of their artistic expressions.
Many of the objects on display have deep cultural, religious, and social significance. Masks and sculptures, for example, are often used in rituals and ceremonies and are imbued with spiritual meaning.
This gallery opened in March 2001.
Installation view of 56 Benin's bronze plaques.
The Benin's bronzes are a group of sculptures which include decorated cast plaques, human and animal heads and figures, and ritual and personal objects.
Wood carving. In Africa, wood carving is an almost entirely male activity. Most carvings are made with an adze like a small axe, but with a horizontal blade that chops small slivers of wood from the surface and finished with a knife and abrasives. While joinery is increasingly common, traditional techniques involved carving objects from a single piece of wood. A collection of African throwing knives.
Forged metal. The miraculous transformation, through fire, of rock into molten metal created the material from which cultural artifacts were forged. Smelting became a metaphor for creation and procreation. In the mythology of some African societies, the creator god is a blacksmith. This mythology invested metal objects, including agricultural tools, currency, and particularly weaponry, with a special potency.
Luzira head, made with clay. It's from Uganda.
This is the tree of life.
The tree of life symbolizes the dynamic creativity of Africa. Mozambique suffered from war and natural disaster in the later 20th century. After the armed struggle for independence from colonial rule ended, Mozambique experienced a civil war from 1976 to 1992 in which the country was used as a pawn in a struggle between opposing world powers. Millions of guns were poured into the country during the war,
most of which remain hidden or buried in the bush. The threat of these weapons led Bishop Dom Dini Sengulain to set up the Transforming Arms into Tools Te project in 1995, which is supported by Christian Aid.
Mozambicans are encouraged to hand over weapons in exchange for items like plows, bicycles, sewing machines. In one case, a whole village gave up its weapons in exchange for a tractor. Some of the weapons are then cut up and turned into sculptures by a group of artists in Maputo.
This video tells the story behind the Tree of Life, a sculpture created from hundreds of weapons made in many parts of the world, though none of them in Africa. From 1977 until 1992, Mozambique, in Southeast Africa, fought a civil war fueled by a global power struggle between East and West, the Cold War.
Examination of these mummies using the CAT scanner has provided clear imagery of what lie within the wrapping. Above, the mummy of Jedhor, from Akhmim, about 250 BCE to 9776. Scanning showed the excellent condition of the body, which lies with the arm crossed on the breast. Artificial eyes, placed in the socket by the embalmers, are clearly viable. An object lying between the thighs may be a rolled funerary papyrus.
Coffin of Hetep-Nebi. The coffin is made from small pieces of tamarisk wood, joined together using wooden dowels, and originally secured at the corners by means of leather thongs. The slots to accommodate these can still be seen. The simple decoration of the coffin consists of a pair of eyes located at the head and on the east-facing side, and brief inscriptions requesting offerings from the gods Anubis and Cantumentiu.
Caring for Gebeline Man. The instrument below is a Hanwell radio transmitter. It accurately measures the temperature and relative humidity inside the showcase and transmits these data every 15 minutes by radio signal. This allows museum staff to monitor Gebeline Man in real time. Maintaining a stable environment is essential for his preservation. If conditions exceed the recommended range, an alarm is automatically triggered.
Permaculture burial. Around 2050 to 1750 BC, this reconstructed burial shows a typical permaculture grave from a cemetery in northern Sudan. The man has been placed in a crouch position on his right side, his head to the east, facing north. Sacrificed sheep or goats are by his feet, with pottery vessels and joints of meat to one side. Such ritual practices suggest that these people believed in some form of afterlife.
The Parthenon Galleries.
It is located in room 18.
These galleries, designed to contain the Parthenon sculptures, were given by Lord Duveen of Millbank in 1939.
The Parthenon sculptures, often referred to as the Elgin marbles, are a collection of classical Greek marble sculptures that originally adorned the Parthenon and other buildings on the Acropolis of Athens. These sculptures are among the greatest examples of ancient Greek art and were created under the direction of the sculptor Phidias.
This is the metope of a centaur and lapith.
Sculpture of a horse's head.
Female figures from the Parthenon.
Sculpture of Lissos.
The Silver Tiger.
The Nereid monument in room 17.
It is the largest and finest of the Lycian tombs from Xanthos, southwest Turkey.
In room 10C, with half, Khorsabad, the Palace of Sargon.
The city and palace at Khorsabad in northern Iraq was built for the Assyrian king Sargon II. The palace entrances were originally dominated by pairs of colossal human-headed winged bulls, which were intended as guardians, accompanied by protective spirits with magical powers.
The Assyrian Empire under Sargon II extended from central Iran to the Mediterranean. The king built himself a new capital city, Khorsabad, with a magnificently sculptured palace, which was discovered by the French archaeologist, Bata.
The British Museum is driven by an insatiable curiosity for the world, a deep belief in objects as reliable witnesses and documents of human history, sound research, as well as the desire to expand and share knowledge.